Republicans in Iowa will be the first to cast their votes in support of a presidential candidate in less than 2 weeks. That's followed a week later by New Hampshire's first in the nation primary. To give us a read on how the campaigns are shaping up in their respective states, we turn to Radio Iowa News Director Kay Henderson and New Hampshire Public Radio senior political reporter and editor Josh Rogers. With a welcome to you both. Kay, we'll start with you since Iowa votes first. Ron DeSantis, who has spent a ton of time and money campaigning in Iowa, today spotlighted what he sees as Donald Trump's broken promises on immigration.
Donald Trump is running saying he's going to do the largest deportation in history, which is interesting because I was at his rallies in 2016 where he said the exact same thing. And what was the result? Fewer deportations than the first term of Barack Obama. That is not getting the job done.
Why aren't arguments like that resonating? Ron DeSantis' initial premise for his campaign was that he was Donald Trump without the baggage. And yet Donald Trump, his polling average right now in Iowa, sits at 50%. What accounts for that?
Well, you have a big group of Iowa Republicans who plan to vote for President Trump. And DeSantis is appealing to people who may be inclined not to vote for Trump. And in the end, they may actually go into a caucus and cast a vote for Donald Trump. So he's walking a very steady line here in that he is criticizing Trump policies that he's making the argument didn't come to the fore or come to fruition during the Trump presidency as a way to try to make the closing argument.
Kay, how are Donald Trump's legal troubles and his authoritarian impulses viewed by Republican voters in Iowa?
Well, the polling shows that they've made no difference at all. And if you talk to people at the rallies, in some respects, it has increased their ardor, if you will, for the former president.
Well, Kay, for decades, Iowa had been the center of the political universe, but no longer. Democrats removed Iowa entirely as the leadoff state on that party's presidential nominating calendar. What significance does it hold for Republicans in this election cycle?
Well, it will be the first test of whether Donald Trump can roll to a sizable victory. The key here is what is the margin between Trump and these two main challengers, DeSantis and Nikki Haley. The question is, will Trump score a victory here, something akin to what Al Gore did in 2000 when he was the sitting vice president and got 60% of Democrats' votes, or in 2000 when George W. Bush, who was the favorite heading in, got more than 41% in a competitive race. So those are sort of the stakes for Trump. Can he, overcome what happened to him last time around when he did not have a campaign apparatus that was at the precinct level and was sort of depending on, in 2016, his popularity to carry him to victory. He has a very much different organization in Iowa this time around. He is organized at the precinct level. He's been having these events around the state, which are in smaller venues than one might suspect, having seen lots of Trump rallies. And he is connecting with people that are precinct captains. They're people on the ground in Iowa.
Let's shift our focus to New Hampshire, where polling averages show a tighter race. Josh, is there time for the candidates not named Trump to close the gap?
Well, they hope so, and it remains to be seen. I mean, certainly what happens in Iowa could affect what happens here in New Hampshire, and it's evident in the polls and also out at events that former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley is certainly clearly in second place here, picking up steam. Whether there's an electorate that can deliver her close enough to Trump. I mean, a lot of the expectation setting that Kay was talking about going on in Iowa, that's going on here as well. New Hampshire was the first state Donald Trump won in 2016. He hasn't campaigned here a lot, and I'm not sure the grassroots outreach that Kay indicated may be happening in Iowa has been going on for Trump here. Nikki Haley has the endorsement of our sitting governor, Chris Sununu. That will help her. How much it helps her is an open question. There's time for her to catch up, but she's still got a great deal of ground to make up if you believe the polls.
So, Josh, is there an expectation that more Democrats will switch their party affiliation and participate in the Republican primary, potentially as a means of voting against Donald Trump?
Well, Democrats are prohibited from voting in the Republican primary. If you are a registered Democrat, you must register. You must vote in the Democratic primary. If you are an undeclared voter, you can pick the ballot you vote on. So while Democrats can't vote in the Republican primary, there are lots of Democratic-leaning independent voters that the non-Trump candidates are certainly reaching out to. And so where they go, I mean, where the independents go in the New Hampshire primary tends to be with the winning candidate. And so that's something that all the campaigns are fighting for, that sort of voter.
Well, Nikki Haley was in New Hampshire today, and she was making the generational argument for her candidacy.
Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president. That's nothing to be proud of. We should want to win the majority of Americans. But the only way we're going to win the majority of the Americans is if we get a new generational leader that leaves the negativity and the baggage behind and focuses on the solutions in the future.
Is that a convincing pitch, a convincing argument for her? I mean, what issues are candidates gaining traction on in New Hampshire?
Well, that's certainly a pitch that has been a staple in her stump speech from the very beginning. And Nikki Haley is interesting in that her messaging hasn't really shifted much over the course of this campaign. A generational argument is a big component of it. In terms of issues, the affordability of pretty much everything is something voters will tell you they're concerned about. Housing costs and availability is a big issue here in New Hampshire. International affairs, a lot of voters who are attracted to Nikki Haley cite her experience at the UN, and some of them cite her more interventionist views in terms of the United States' role overseas. She makes a point of linking, the war in Ukraine with China and Taiwan, and the situation in Gaza as being all linked, and that is something that some of the voters turning out to see her find compelling. But the generational thrust is a big one, and there are a lot of voters in New Hampshire and elsewhere who are just fatigued and not enthusiastic about the notion of 4 more years of Joe Biden or 4 more years of Donald Trump. And so, her message on that front is finding an audience.
Kay, same question to you. We focus so much on the personalities. What about the policies? What do Iowa Republicans say they care about in this election cycle?
Well, the biggest applause line at most of these events for all the candidates is how they describe their policies on immigration and border patrol. But I do want to touch off on something that my colleague in New Hampshire just raised. The most interesting thing about the Nikki Haley crowd in the past couple of weeks is that it's being populated in part by people who have participated in Iowa Republican Party caucuses and in Iowa Democratic Party caucuses. And I talked to several people who are considering becoming a registered Republican for a day at a Nikki Haley event this past weekend because they don't want to see either Donald Trump or Joe Biden in the White House this time next year.
Kay Henderson of Radio Iowa and Josh Rogers of New Hampshire Public Radio. Our thanks to you both.
You're welcome.
Thank you.